You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Samak, session number 1322. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a private practice that is thriving and that you absolutely love. As you may have been following us, I'm starting a new counseling practice. Look at me. We're in week 4 right now of it, and I've given myself the limits of only 2 hours a week to work on this. And now I have even more chutzpah of wanting to do this, because back in episode 1311, when I was in week 1, I was interviewing Dan King to talk about starting a practice that eventually I could sell, because he's our expert around selling practices and buying practices. And he said, I don't think you can run a practice in 2 weeks or 2 hours a week. So I am now out to get Dan King to show him that I can. Bringing my friend Jeremy Zug onto the show today. Jeremy, Dan, and I hung out down at the Mental Health Marketing Conference that Steve Turney put on, and had dinner a number of times together. And so Jeremy and I have known each other for years. He's the owner with his wife, Catherine, of Practice Solutions. They just rock out the billing world. So welcome, Jeremy, to the Practice of the Practice podcast yet again.
No, thanks for having me back, Joe. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, what is this? Probably like number 5 or 6 for you?
Yeah, it's got to be. So it feels like fun. Yeah,
it's like SNL, where there's the club of people that have like hosted 5 times. Like you're whatever club that is, you're part of that with Practice.
Nice. I need a badge or something. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'm building this practice, Great Lakes Online Counseling. So let me kind of update you on where we're at with it here in week 4, and then from there we'll talk a little bit more. So actually, no, we're in week 5 because I already recorded week 4 last week. So week 5. So tomorrow I'm meeting with Tom from Session Sites to wrap up the website.
Nice.
I've met with Headway, talked with them about kind of how that offering would be. Talked with Kay about credentialing from Lanyard. I have the LLC formed already through Wyoming, thanks to my attorney, John, who was on here, who talked about that. So all those episodes have aired. And then really what we've narrowed down right now with just the help of AI, and maybe you can help with this, is Pennsylvania and Michigan being some of the highest payers. So the things I'm thinking about us evaluating today is I see how I could go totally Headway, I could go totally Practice Solutions, or I could do some sort of mixture in the middle to launch faster. To me, it's also about speed, getting people onboarded. So that's a question I have, and then also want to talk just the general billing systems, because I don't know as much as I used to know when I owned a practice. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. So where should we start? What's a good starting point?
Well, let's start with when does it make sense for someone to work with like a Headway? When does it make sense for someone to have just their own biller, like a Practice Solutions? And when does it make sense to do some sort of mixed model? So maybe who is a great group practice candidate for Headway? Who's a great group practice candidate for you guys? And then let's talk about the mixed model.
Yeah, we work with practices as well that are in both. So it's really interesting. I think the Headway model is really good if you don't want to spend the time on credentialing, either with a vendor or doing it yourself. So I think for you, the mission is 2 hours a week. So I would say on time alone, going Headway first to get off the tarmac faster makes the most sense for the least amount of headache. And then running that for a while, and then using maybe 30, 40 minutes a week over the next year to credential. It's Great Lakes Psychotherapy, Great Lakes
online counseling.
Yeah, okay. So then you can get Great Lakes credentialed on your own in parallel over that time. So for you, the time constraint is really important. If you weren't trying to build a practice in 2 hours a week, which is a very strict, very ambitious goal, which I love that you're chasing Dan down. If you wanted to like own everything, then you would credential yourself. And I think it really comes down to the group practice that's a good candidate for credentialing and doing it themselves, and then having a biller, whether that's internal, external. That's the practice owner that wants to have it all, right? They don't want to have to do credentialing later. They're willing to have the time, they have the money to wait the 6 months to get credentialed. They're willing to put together a strategy. If they want the lowest calorie option, that's Headway, for sure. And there's no wrong answer there. It just is a business decision about what you want to do.
Yeah. So I remember at the group practice conference in May, you, me, and Grant were having coffee together and just like talking through like, yeah, there's clearly people that would be more Headway. And that I wasn't even thinking about Great Lakes Online Counseling at that time. And so it sounds, so when you own everything, tell me more about that. Like, what are also the headaches that you own when you own everything?
Credentialing is the biggest problem because you're going to deal with bureaucracy at such a high level. And that's going to be the biggest time suck, right? Because your options are, if you're going to credential yourself, you have to do the application, you have to negotiate the rates, you have to look at the contract, probably get your attorney involved. You have to follow up a bunch, and then you have to get in network and contracted, and then submit some test claims to see if it all works. And that process, nose to tail, I think is 120, 180 days. And so if you're going to see patients in that time, they either have to be private pay or out of network, which are fine options, but you have to have the market that sustains that. So that's another layer of thinking about the client communication. With a Headway, it's plug and play, and it's really nice. They add you to a contract, and then you can kind of grow this little ecosystem. And what we've seen a lot of groups do is they go the Headway route for speed, and then slowly over time, they take it back in-house. And that's a nice transition, right? It's a nice transition for everybody. You get the contract, clients are taken care of, continuity of care. It's great. And so, yeah, it just depends on your tolerance for shenanigans, I guess.
I don't have much tolerance for shenanigans with this project right now. I could see like the highest payers. So in Michigan, I think that's probably Blue Cross, eventually saying like looking at how much would I get on my own versus how much with like a Headway. I can see that making sense, but then also it's like, well, how much is like, if I'm going to pay a biller 6% or more, and then I'm going to pay potentially a credentialer to do that. And then I look at my own, just keeping up with it. And, they have even clawback protections and things like that. To me, I think it's just a decision of how much do I want to be involved in taking on the risk.
Right. And for you, it's very little. And so I would say go the Headway route. I think, and we'd have to check on this, but I think the problem with going the Headway route is you don't own the insurance contract. So when you go to sell the practice, it'll be interesting to see how do you jettison that organization with a Headway practice. So has that been done before?
So I talked to Grant a little bit about that. I have to firm that up. And I think like the year or two before really selling, because initially it was 2 hours a week, sell within 5 years. But then God, if I'm making like passive income, that's just pretty easy, and I've set it up in a way that works well, it might not, I'll have to run the numbers on what I think I could get for the practice versus kind of what the income side of it is. So I've kind of adjusted since the beginning of saying like sell within 5 years. I think it's make the decision to sell or to have it be passive income, and maybe even hire an operations person where I'm not even working 2 hours a week. So I'll continue to do. Are you saying that that's not a good idea to have an operations person, or that's the dream?
No, that's the best way to do it, I think. Just somebody to run it, and then you check in with them an hour a week or an hour a month even. I mean, that would be the best way to go. So, so credentialing is obviously your biggest headache. And then with Headway, you get like EHR light, and then you get the contracts, and you're into that world. One of the issues that I've seen, and this is across all the big MSO players, is as I watch the reimbursement data, those organizations share between 17 and 21% of the same network. And so payers are starting to slowly chop away at the reimbursement rate that they used to command during COVID. because they're not adding net new providers. They're adding sort of the same providers shuffled around.
Yeah.
So that would be a risk of the Headway model. But somebody like you, I could see how the pros far outweigh some of the business risk downstream. Right.
And I think also because the payment model that I'm doing for paying the clinicians is 40% of what's collected. But since it's online, because the math we typically do is 40% goes to clinicians, about 30% goes to operations, and ideally 20 to 30% goes into the pocket of the owner. And so if we're online completely and don't have some of that overhead, we then have more of a marketing budget and we can ride some of those waves a little bit easier. I mean, we'll see. Like, that's why this is a public project. There may be times I fall on my face too and just talk about that. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not an adventure until something goes a little sideways. So, yeah. And then if you're a clinician that's like, I don't want to do the Headway thing, I want to own it all and control it all, that's totally fine. I would say own the credentialing process as much as you can before outsourcing a lick of that, because I think as a practice owner, you'll have a lot more grace on the waiting period and the shenanigans if it's you versus a vendor. So that would be maybe one piece of guidance that would be helpful. And then I would say do the billing on your own while you're building a caseload. And then once your caseload's full, jettison that out, either internal with a person you trust or outsource it to a company you like that has good processes and procedures. And then once you get really big as a group, you bring it back in-house because the economics make way more sense in-house at a bigger size long-term, right? That just is good sustainability.
So you're saying even working with a company like yours, there's a break point that it doesn't make sense to have a biller kind of outside. What is there? Is there a financial side or a clinician side where you're like at 20 clinicians or at $1 million, like bring it in-house? Like, what's the rule of thumb there?
That's a good question. Clinicians is such a tough one because the reimbursement rates are so disparate, as you know, right? And then now it's not been my experience that Pennsylvania is like top of the leaderboard in terms of rates, which we could talk about. But our general philosophy is around 1.5 to 2 million is when you should bring it in-house in revenue. Because your biller should be able to handle 3 to 6 million with the right processes. And 40 hours a week is a lot of billing time, a ton. And if you're going to pay billing can be a profit center depending on how clean your billing is. But if it's really clean and it's functioning, billing is going to be a cost center. So now you're just talking about expense mitigation as you move forward, and having an in-house biller that you have some fixed costs or maybe cost of living adjustments makes a lot more sense over time. Now,
what's the average biller cost to bring in-house? Like 70 grand a year, 100 grand a year, 50 grand?
No, you should be between like 50 and 70. And then what I would say is you land on the low side and then incentivize them with some results, right? Like a good clean claim rate, no clawbacks, no notes that aren't done, right? So that your biller can operate as a point of accountability for clinicians to get their notes done in a gentle way, right? Yeah. But we do this all the time. Like, hey, you're leaving 10 grand on the table because we have 100 notes not done. So we got to get those done so we don't lose the $10,000, right? So you can build some of that in to the biller's role. And that's what I would recommend is you incent them in the right direction based on some outcomes for sure. But you land on the low side of the benefit spectrum.
I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. As a group practice leader, you know that insurance and admin work can take up hours every week. Time you could be spending with clients or growing your team. Benefits reset season is the perfect opportunity to make improvements to those processes. That's why I personally recommend Headway for group practices. Headway lightens your load with fast and free insurance credentialing and admin support, plus offers competitive per-session rates and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices, and they work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid groups of all sizes. Thousands of group practice leaders use Headway to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. The best part, there's no subscription fees. Now's a great time to join. With Headway, you'll be helping more people get the care they deserve while supporting your team with more clients and a lighter admin load. Make next year the best year yet for your group practice. Head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe headway.co/Joe to book a tour. So what I'm hearing is probably start with Headway. Then at a certain point, if I want to bring it in-house and you can figure out how to do that and still work 2 hours a week, pick the highest level insurances, potentially bring those in-house. Then in the couple years before selling, or if I'm already at the 1.5 plus, it might really make sense to bring all of it in-house, hire a couple billers that are doing the quality assurance and things like that.
Yeah, that might make the most sense. Now the market could change and we could see what happens, right?
Right.
It's kind of been a volatile year legislatively, so it'll be kind of interesting. Are you thinking just one payer?
I initially started with that, but then I met with Headway a week ago, and actually I'm meeting with them after this, and they have to have all their corporate approve those recordings of that, because
cool.
it's like the actual like onboarding side of things.
Nice.
So I want to release those live, but we'll see. Want to respect them. But like in looking at some of the payers, they're pretty close to like a Blue Cross Blue Shield, and so it's like I think in general, if we can be at 110 or higher per session, then it's like a no-brainer. Because we're doing 40%, which I think ends up being about $50 a session, fixed rate. And then let me see my notes on what we're paying for part-time. Yeah, so for part-time, a part-time based on 20 hours a week with an average of 15 clinical sessions, we're doing $45,000 a year. And then full-time based on a 35-hour work week, of course, a 4-day work week here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a $74,000 a year. So
that's great.
Yeah, so great rates for kind of like a mid-level therapist, but still makes sense for us numbers-wise.
Yeah. Can I ask why you didn't consider Minnesota, or maybe it just didn't hit the radar?
No, like I want to hear that. Tell me what states, from your perspective. So I literally, and I did this live on one of the episodes, like used AI to look at who pays the best, who has the most rural population, and who has the most like legislative, like who has the least legislative issues in the online counseling space. And New York, Pennsylvania, and Michigan came up. And then in talking to John on the attorney one, which was back in episode, which one was that? That was episode 1315. So just a few weeks ago with John David Gardner talking about legal. He basically said New York should be your last state based on some of the legislative things. So they're off the table. So Pennsylvania, Michigan have been the ones that I'm focusing on, but like that's why this is super valuable to say no, maybe there's other states.
Oh, for sure. So ironically, I would recommend Wyoming, right?
We are starting with Great Lakes states, so ones that do cut.
Oh,
but I mean, maybe we do Wyoming as well. Okay.
Well, if we can throw some water from Lake Michigan, like take a ladle and then sprinkle it on like Wyoming or something.
Okay, we may, why not?
That work. But so I'll just throw that out there. Great Lakes states, but if Minnesota.
Well, no, let's start with top U.S. payers, and then because I mean, if we're looking at optimizing the business, I just bought Great Lakes Online Counseling as like a placeholder. I also own like Houston Online Counseling, Los Angeles Online Counseling. Like I just bought all these like city online counselings. So I may try this. I may buy Wyoming Online Counseling if someone doesn't get to it first. So
that'd be great. Yeah, I can't say you just said that on a live, man. Somebody's gonna get scooped up real quick.
Help me to name cheap.
So if I were to pick, if I had my perfect mixture of online counseling, it would be Alaska first. And the dynamic there is that Premera is the Blue Cross franchise in Washington. They cover the state of Alaska. And anytime they have any inpatient anything, they fly folks from Alaska to Seattle. And so any online therapy in Alaska is going to get a premium on the reimbursement rate because it's way, way cheaper than flying people to Seattle. And a really rural population, right? And with new internet options, people can get online counseling a lot easier. And CMS released very favorable telehealth rules for therapy moving forward. So that all looks really good. But Alaska would be really.
And what would you say? I know you can't say exact rates, but what's the typical for like 90837?
170 to 190.
Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah. So really, really good. And low legislative involvement. And so all of that's nice. So Alaska would be up there. Shout out to Montana. I would have Montana on that list as well. Wyoming, but then also Minnesota. So Minnesota is very pro mental health. Their governor, it was either this last governor or 2 governors ago, had experienced some personal mental health stuff, and so it became a priority. And I think they have pretty favorable legislative policies as well. And they're a Great Lakes state, I think. I think we would throw that in.
Yeah, Minnesota, like just right up by the Lake Superior, just a little sliver.
So they count.
They do count. What's their average rate?
They're in the 150 to 170 range.
Cool.
Yeah, and Wyoming's in there too. I know they're not a Great Lakes state, and then the other one that is the 2 others that are always surprising, West Virginia, especially since they border Kentucky. Kentucky has the worst rates among Florida and California, but West Virginia is very good in the 150 to 170 world, and then Maryland. Maryland has great rates as well. So those are like Atlantic states, I suppose. But those would be the states that if I were doing online counseling and you could hand me just all of it, that's what I would take.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there's opportunity to work with Tom on like replicating the website if it's just like East Coast online counseling. Like,
oh, there you go.
I mean, I'm sure that there's URLs that for $10 I could purchase that we could build this model into something robust that the branding isn't terrible and maybe I'll run through the same website or something. But
totally,
no, that's really good to know. Like these other states outside of the Great Lakes, because I mean that was just to give ourselves sort of an image. I'm from Michigan. But yeah, that's really
Michigan is very healthy. Don't get me wrong. Michigan's great. Pennsylvania.
Would you rule out Pennsylvania?
I don't know. That's a good question. I've been trying to like filter through the files in my head on Pennsylvania, and I can't pull up the exact file on what I would think about Pennsylvania. I think it's okay for sure, but it wouldn't be my go-to. Minnesota in the Great Lakes region, Illinois might have some legislative hiccups, but Illinois has very good rates as well. So yeah, those are all really good. But in Pennsylvania, from a legal perspective, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't give legal advice, but there's a lot of value in listening to a good attorney.
Yeah. No, John's been super helpful.
Yeah, and if he didn't think Minnesota, then there's probably a reason. So
I didn't even ask him about Minnesota. My big question for him was like operating in different states, and I had narrowed it down to those 3. He just said New York's just tough. He said each coast is always the one that's kind of making the laws, and then it trickles to the middle.
But I will say Oregon though is up there too. I would very much not count out Oregon. I think they just released something like $3 to $5 million for new mental health graduates to like pay their way through graduate school at the state level. So, and they have a rural population. They have a lot of kids and children that need mental and behavioral health services. So they're also not bad, and in the rate world, they're also pretty good. So I wouldn't necessarily count that one out. There are exceptions on the coasts, but you do have to filter through like what's good and what's bad. Like I would never recommend you go to Florida. Right, the uninsured rate is just too high, and it drives the reimbursement rates down.
Okay, that's awesome to know. When you think about just like specialties, are there certain specialties that you just see get paid more, or that are like hot ones right now that, you know, if we're building it from scratch, like what are the specialties that you'd say, here's the 3 to 5, like if you do this, like you're going to knock it out of the park?
That's a great question. You know, I don't think you're going to like my answer, but children and youth, for sure. And anything with maternity. So postpartum depression, perinatal mental health. I watched a client of ours just win a negotiation with a payer. She does maternal mental health, and it's one of the most underserved populations right now in the country. And they were just like, what do you want? Tell us what you want.
Wow.
We'll just hand it. She has this big group. Great practice, really clean. She's doing really good work, and just went to town. And it's because the state that she's in, there's just nobody doing it. So, maternity, children and youth. What is the other one that I've been hearing a lot more recently? I'll think of it and I'll send you a text.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 that have stuck out the most over the last couple of years. And I think it's because people are more lonely now. And I think the AI therapy thing is a giant mistake, and it's actually creating more loneliness.
Yeah.
And so I know it's always been hard to make friends and build meaningful relationships, but I know it's never been harder. And so I
Right.
think youth and teens are particularly susceptible to that.
Yeah.
And so those are the two specialties that I don't know if you've got a passion for those, but
Yeah, well, and because I'm only working 2 hours a week, I'm not doing any of the clinical work. So,
there
so
you
I don't need to have the passion for it.
go.
And I'm being like transparent about that. I'm building this to show you can build a business and that you can follow what we talk about here and have good advice from experts we connect with. So, yeah, kind of the direction that I went, because Tom, when I went through his onboarding sheet for the website, it's very like, what's your specialty? And that's what I teach too. And I'm like, oh God, like, I'm kind of doing this not for the money, but just for the practice of building a practice. And so,
Makes
to
sense.
me,
Practice
like so, but then I'm like, well, what do I know? And so the angle we took to start with is, families going through divorce. And so co-parenting, kids issues, like recovering from the trauma of divorce, betrayal trauma with my new book, dating after betrayal, that kind of aligns with it, for some like just cred, I guess. So that's where we started. We don't have to stay there, but I think that at least is a good starting point for,
Right.
we know divorce inside. I know my divorce inside and out. I don't know. I know everyone else's, but it's just like a starting point for healing. So
Yeah, that's great.
yeah. So I think the
Amazing.
children and families thing, like that definitely could fit within there.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of children and family therapists out there, right? I think
Yeah.
there's a big group of therapists that want to work with anxiety and depression, which makes sense because it's the most prevalent. Those are the two most prevalent disorders. But then that leaves a dearth for children and youth, and then maternal mental health is a very niche specialty.
Yeah.
Which I think you've talked a lot about niching down and finding your group, and so that's an important one right now for sure. But it shifts.
And I imagine that Headway, we could talk with them about negotiating those contracts better, with how they do it. Because if we make more money, they make more money. So
for sure, Yep. Which makes sense.
Oh my gosh, Jeremy, this has been so helpful. I know I'll have you back on as I grow and transition, and we'll keep you posted on it. Thanks so much for being on the show today. If people want to connect with Practice Solutions, Practice Soul, that's SOL.com/Joe. They'll move you to the top of the list because you're referred through me. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and I'll be following along. It'll be really fun to see how it turns out.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks for following this journey, both here on LinkedIn, we're streaming, as well on Facebook, and then TikTok. I'm on there as well, really active on TikTok lately. So make sure you follow the journey there. Also, we're putting lots of tips as well. Also, we couldn't do this without our sponsor. Today, actually, it was Headway that just lined up. So Headway is our sponsor. If you're looking at growing your group practice, head on over to join.headway.co. That's co/Joe. Again, that's join.headway.co/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music. And this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.